is we, those of us here mute our computer until, we're going to speak.
Okay.
And that would be on the bottom, which I just did.
Yeah. Welcome, Carrie.
Yep. Hi, Carrie.
Welcome.
I don't see him, but I know he's out there somewhere.
Can't you see me?
Yeah,
I did.
Yeah. I see Carrie.
Yeah, I'm only limited with 8 people, so.
Okay. I'm gonna click on
Okay.
Well, we can tell you he's here because he's right across from me. So.
I hear
Okay,
that.
I'll ask the board secretary to take a roll.
Lisa Johnston,
Here.
Dave Nichols,
Here.
Richard Nitch,
Here.
Meredith Sauer,
Here.
Catherine Schlup, Carrie Trask,
here.
and Kathy Lewis.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, and then we need action on our minutes from our last 2 meetings, our January 12th meeting and the January 20th special meeting. I would entertain a motion and a second to approve those minutes.
I would move that we, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it sounds like we got 4 of them. I'll take that. Okay.
I would move that we approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion or additions or corrections? If not, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the minutes are carried. And then we'll move on to our school showcase, and that will be Monroe Elementary School. So if you're ready, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I have brought 2 people with me today, as you can see. They are Ruth Krause. She is a literacy specialist here at Monroe, and also Luella is a 5th grade student at Monroe. So you're going to hear me talk for the most part, for the first part of it, and then they're going to add in. They'll be the most exciting part of the presentation, probably. So let me share my screen with you. Can you just give me a thumbs up if you can see it?
Yep.
Okay, excellent. So this is our Monroe School Showcase. The focus of our work this year is best summarized in this phrase. It's feedback to move student learning forward. So what we are working on at Monroe is the giving and receiving of effective feedback. We know that we can double the rate of student learning by giving good feedback to students and teaching students how to receive feedback. So we have chosen this as our main focus this year. We know that feedback needs to be specific and targeted to a student's individual learning. And so that has been our focus. So we know that our most critical student learning outcomes are to fill in the achievement gaps that have occurred at Monroe. And those achievement gaps, we definitely, need to improve our student scores on things like the forward exam in both reading, writing, and math. But we also have achievement gaps that we are watching with our special education students and our ELL students. So we believe that by giving good, effective feedback to students, we can fill those achievement gaps and close them. The teaching and leadership practices that affect our student learning priorities are as follows. So on a daily basis, if you are a teacher or another staff member here at Monroe, you know what the students' goals are, and our students know what their goals are for learning as well. Our teachers implement high quality instruction. The district has been great about giving us really high quality resources in both ELA and math. So our focus this year is to then, the next step is to provide effective feedback to move that student learning forward. So this is going to occur within the lesson when we're teaching all students, but also especially in those small groups and one-on-one meetings that teachers have with students in their classrooms. So we know that if we can provide effective feedback in those areas, we will close those achievement gaps. here's the practices that we're doing to make that happen, because it doesn't just happen right away, right? Like it's hard. So we are running high quality professional learning 2 to 3 times a month on how to give effective feedback. The cool thing about this is all teachers, no matter what you teach, can benefit from this professional learning. And that includes other staff as well, right? Instructional aides. We're not just focused on ELA and math, where the Phy Ed teacher and the art teacher sit there and wonder, how does this affect me? Every teacher, every person in our building can give students feedback to meet their social, academic, behavior goals. Then what we're having teachers do is they're watching student data after they've given feedback to see if they are truly moving student learning forward. I forgot to say to interrupt at any time if you have questions, okay? So basically, although I make that sound easy, again, you have to kind of hit that sweet spot, which is what this visual represents, right? So you have somebody giving feedback, somebody receiving feedback, and you gotta hit the sweet spot. And that can be more difficult than it sounds like. Basically, to do that, the feedback needs to be timely. And I'm not gonna go through all these words with you, but it needs to be timely. It needs to meet the student's needs. It has to be specific to that student. Luella's gonna talk to us how her teacher has given her specific feedback for exactly what she needs to learn. It's gonna, you kind of have to show the child their earlier work compared to now, and it's based on a student's learning goals. So to really get good at this feedback suddenly becomes a 3 to 5 year plan where we practice and practice and practice. We start to give, right now we're kind of talking about teacher to student feedback this year, but we also are going to talk about students giving other students feedback, teachers giving other teachers feedback. I'm practicing giving feedback to teachers, right? So it becomes this cycle where everybody is practicing and we suddenly have a culture of feedback. So that's our goal for this year. Our goal, we're kind of set a goal of 50% of our feedback should move student learning forward. And I know that number seems a little bit low, but again, you got to hit that sweet spot. So we're just going to keep monitoring and adjusting that number upwards. MPSD has milestones of success, and those milestones are reading and math growth. I think it's pretty obvious how effective feedback can lead to reading and math growth. But we also have things like co-curricular participation. Feedback can be used in these settings too, right? Our flag football, our field hockey, we can be giving feedback on student skills. We have Battle of the Books, we have credit union typically, and feedback can be given in all of those things. And then student engagement, we believe that if students receive effective feedback, they're going to be more tied into their learning and their engagement will go up. So we have 100-day benchmarks. We are sort of past that 100 days. I'm going to call this 100 days. Who knows how many days of school we've had, right? Exactly in this weird year. But I do just want to mention here that this is actually a partnership and a collaboration with Riverview Elementary, Madison Elementary, and Monroe Elementary. So the principals of these 3 buildings, we meet and we are the ones that talk about our action plans. We're the ones that develop the job embedded professional learning. And our the cool thing is that our staff are working together. So they are meeting and working together across the 3 schools, which is something that I don't think in recent history has been done before. So 100-day benchmarks that we met we rolled out this feedback focus. So we made teachers aware of why it's so important that this is what we're working on and why we're going to reflect on it and get better at it. The first kind of feedback we provided teachers was on questioning strategies. And Luella is going to tell you more about those questioning strategies and how her teacher used those strategies to get her to learn, to move her learning forward. And then in this month, we are learning about strategies that help a student if they're stuck, right? And I've been there myself. I get stuck on something and don't know how to move forward, and what are strategies that students can use themselves to get stuck. And that goes with that whole growth mindset piece of it. Our next slide is going to show our process of how we are running that professional learning. So our key action steps have been this job embedded professional learning that I've mentioned, which again occurs 2 to 3 times per month. We then give teachers time, 1 to 2 weeks, to implement whatever strategies we've taught them in that job embedded professional learning. And there's always choice within there, right? Like you get to decide the strategies that you want to try that's best for your students, your grade level, your subject. While they're doing the feedback, teachers and staff members are also doing student observations on learning. And then we bring staff back together and they get to reflect on what they've been practicing for those 1 to 2 weeks, and have some dialogue and PLCs again across buildings. So I'll just go back and say one more thing. So actually the cool thing is that you will be able to, when Riverview and Madison present their showcases at the end of the school year, you're going to also know how Monroe also progressed through this. So you can look forward to that information in the spring. Here's our plan to engage families. One of the really interesting parts of this pandemic has been that our communication with families has skyrocketed. We had to, right? Like, I think sometimes in the past we just, sent out our twice monthly newsletters and we just assumed that families would know what was going on, right, from those newsletters. We have had to, send 2 to 3 times a month newsletters, plus Infinite Campus messages, plus little blurbs about material pickup, and this is what's going on this day. So our communication has really increased with families, and I think that that's a good thing. And I think whether we're in a pandemic or not, it will stay that way. Our community partnerships, we are partnering with the Southfield townhouses, which are in our boundaries. We have a pickup area there for materials, so we drop off student materials there, and then families can pick up right at that at the townhouses. So we have a partnership there. Looking forward to increasing that partnership and providing support for his name is RJ at the townhouses. He does a really good job of student engagement and learning there. I was really excited about this. We were going to start, like 2 weeks after the pandemic started, we were going to start a walking school bus with the health department. And that was going to, a walking school bus, if you don't know, is we have adult leaders within our community walk children to school. And as you walk, children join the walking school bus. And we had that all set up, and the pandemic hit. And I don't know if you know it, but the health department got really busy and they couldn't worry about a walking school bus. So it's on hold. But we do look forward to continuing that community partnership. I think it's going to be great for our kids and our families. It's a great, healthy way to start a school day. And then our parent sessions, we've offered assistance throughout virtual learning for parents and offered sessions. We have a very active PTA at Monroe, so that's our parent involvement as well. Now on to what I promised was the exciting part. So this is Ruth Krause. No pressure, Ruth. But she's going to talk to you a little bit about our feedback work and what that entails from a staff perspective at Monroe. And she is a literacy specialist, so she gets to work with staff members in professional learning communities to work with them to engage in practices that would improve teaching. And then she also works with students as well, so she's got a unique perspective. Take it away, Ruth.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to share just a little bit from the staff perspective, the impact that our school goal has had. To be brutally honest, from a staff perspective, focusing on a goal beyond survival in a year like this is definitely challenging. We've gone through so much new. We've had to redefine our practice multiple times in multiple environments. So, I mean, that alone is a huge testament to the work and commitment that we're doing. But the awesome part about the goal that we've chosen as a school is, despite all the new, despite the different environments, it's been a goal that we've been able to implement no matter what. So in the fall, when we were all in the buildings and we're working hard, like, we could work on giving feedback. When we had to go to virtual, it was still something we could work on. We could continue giving feedback. And in fact, like in some of those small groups and one-on-one sessions at our elementary level in the afternoons, I think that was extremely powerful. And again, day one, back to having kids in the building, we are super excited to again be working on giving our students feedback that's going to continue to move them forward. So overall, in a year that's had so much new and so many transitions, this has been a goal that has been grounding. And again, it's something that everyone can get behind. I know Andrew already mentioned, but it's pretty cool to be part of a school goal that everyone can work on. You know, she mentioned sometimes, you know, when we have like a high literacy goal or like a high math goal, it's hard for our specialists to say, yep, I'm working on that too. And so this idea of giving feedback, no matter what area you're working in, it's been something that all our staff has been able to work on together. And so we're able to have those types of conversations together too about how is it going. Sometimes when we've met together, it has been like with like grade level or like specialty, but other times we've met across our grade levels and across our specialties, and we can still have the same conversations about giving feedback that and how is it going? Like, how is it going in our practice? So again, it's been something that we've been able to get behind. That collaboration piece that Andrea mentioned too across our schools has been so huge, especially as we had to launch in a virtual, but then also, you know, at a time where, you know, we are doing our best to stay healthy and keep our distance and be well. It can be super isolating. And so with this development that we've been able to do, not just with our school, Monroe, but with Madison and with Riverview, it's kind of built in some of this collaboration time. And I know that some teams have like gone beyond just that quick time that we've had on maybe our Friday morning meeting and have reached out to each other. And that again has just built that communication and collaboration with staff members. When we think about student learning, this is a year, again, where we have to really focus and prioritize. We know that our time with our students is so limited, and we have to really make sure that those individual goals are exactly what they need that's going to push them forward. We need to make sure what we are helping students with is exactly what's going to move them forward the most, that'll have the greatest impact. So we're really leaning into our students as individuals, helping them set those goals, and then using that feedback to further their learning. So again, using feedback as like this professional development goal for us this year has been so perfect in a year where we have to really prioritize where we want our students to go so that they can get the most out of that opportunity. I think also from a staff perspective, what I am personally most excited about, and I think other staff would agree, we've often been part of, you know, a plan. Every year we have this big goal, and then we start a brand new school year and it's like, all right, here's our new goal, let's move on. And sometimes that's kind of hard. So I know I'm super excited to be able to focus and hone in on a part of my professional practice, but also know that like next year and the following year, I'm going to be able to continue to grow in that instead of just like starting a little bit and then moving on and starting something else new and moving on. I love the fact that as our schools working together, we're going to be able to continue to grow in this practice. When I think about student impact, and obviously Luella is going to be able to see even more. But what we've done as staff is during these development sessions, we've chosen a question. And I think, again, our administrators that are giving us that, like, just being able to have some choice in how we're developing, choosing a question that we think is going to best work with us and best work with our students. We've chosen that questioning strategy to practice. And then we've been given time to practice. And that's really cool too. I've been in so many professional development sessions where it's like, here you go, this is cool information. And we never really get that opportunity to try. And so being able to have time to try, but also knowing we're going to come back and talk about this and revisit it, it's also that like extra urgency of like, okay, I've got to make sure I do this. We were given tools to use so that we can have write out like a little toolkit as we're working with students in the classroom or when we were virtual. And then we've come back together and reflected. And like I said, with that collaboration piece, we've been able to reflect as like a grade level together, but we've also reflected across different specialties. And that was really interesting just to hear, like, what did you try? How did it go? What did you notice? What do you want to refine? What do you want to continue? Or what do you want to change? And then after those discussions, we were able to go back and practice some more. So some of the things that I know as staff members we noticed as far as student impact, by using some of these questioning strategies, we're getting more from our students. We're able to better assess their learning. We're able to see the strategies they're using, which then helps us know the next strategies they're ready for, the next instruction we can make. We also noticed the language, like the vocabulary in our students. Because we're sharing that feedback with them and telling them what they can work on, they're able to name what it is that they're working on, which is pretty awesome. And we also notice as staff members that sometimes the students are becoming so good at it that they didn't even need our question. They were already starting to share their thinking without our prompting, which again shows we're ready for more. Like, we're ready to develop even further questioning techniques and strategies. So again, like from a staff perspective, I think in a year of a lot of crazy and a lot of different and a lot of new, this has been, for us, exactly what we need at exactly the right time.
Thank you, Ruth. And up next, we have Luella Monroe. That is not a typo. Her last name actually happens to be the name of the school that she attends, Monroe Elementary. So Luella is a 5th grade student, and she's going to talk about how she's noticed her teacher using feedback with her. Okay, take it away, Luella.
First off, I would just like to say that I love Monroe School. To be honest, I really don't want to leave here, and these are my reasons why. My first reason why I love Monroe is because of the community. And I'm not just talking about the kids at Monroe, I'm also talking about the teachers and the staff that do so much for all of us. Another reason why I love Monroe is because of our principal, Mrs. Freeze. She isn't just a principal, she pushes us to be better people and kind to one another. My second reason why I love Monroe is because of the teachers. They don't just push us to go above and beyond with our education and schoolwork, they push us by giving us feedback. An example of this is when Mrs. Stout gave me feedback on my summarizing and told me that I had way too many details. After that, I learned that I needed to get to the point and grab good details, not the fluffy stuff. Also, my teacher gives me feedback by asking me questions I can't just give a short answer to. Questions like, can you explain that? And why do you think that? After answering those questions, I can understand what the topic is about. All in all, I know that I learned a lot at Monroe School, and it is a great school to be at. Thank you.
Thank you, Luella. You did a great job. School board members, are there any questions that you have for any of the three of us?
I don't have any questions, but I would echo Luella. I think, your teachers are doing a phenomenal job, and Luella, you did a great job.
Yeah, you did. I would agree with that. Luella, you did a wonderful job in your presentation. I would comment, that providing student feedback, it seems like a no-brainer, but sometimes, it's those simple things that you take for granted. I was just kind of curious, that, it's what you're describing is providing, it's specific feedback based on each student's learning goals is what I heard. To me, that almost sounds like individual student learning plans. Is it similar to that?
I would say it is, right? So if you are teaching reading, you often know what skills or strategies a student needs in reading. You can say the same thing about writing and math as well, right? And so, yeah, it is the teachers, talking about those goals and kind of moving them forward until they're ready for a new, right, skill or strategy. So it does take that, take that form of individualization for students.
And that's wonderful. And I also was going to comment and ask if you had mentioned, that communication with families has skyrocketed. I was going to ask you if you'd be able to sustain that level of communication, but you already answered that question. I think setting that as a goal, keeping that high level of communication with parents, it's a thumbs up on that.
Thank you.
Awesome job, Luella. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
And thank you, Monroe School. You're doing a fantastic job.
Thank you.
It was very fun to see a fresh, young face on the board meeting.
Yeah.
And I'll let you. So thank you, Luella.
What was
I
that
do
all
have
about?
a question though. You mentioned, I love that this is a long-term goal. As Ruth had commented, just doing a flip every single year. Sometimes that can keep you, I guess it doesn't make it seem almost as serious. Like it really allows you to plunge into it, right, for a number of years and to see the outcome happening with your kids long term. So I'm wondering, just to be clear, the year for your measurable achievement, you're using the achievement gaps then and testing and how they come out, or goals. Like, what is it you're using as your measurable success?
So we kind of have like two areas of measurable success, Kathy. So the first would be our observations of student feedback, right? The principals going into classrooms and observing and saying, are students taking that feedback that teacher gives them and moving that, is that moving learning forward? So that's that 50% that I mentioned is how effective are we at that feedback. The other piece would be, it's been difficult to know data, right? Because the data for the forward exam is from when I wasn't even the principal here, and we don't even have those students in our school, but we know that consistently we have those achievement gaps. So really what the measures there would be, we're looking at our, reading record data, looking at our assessments. Where are those students on these daily assessments or monthly assessments until we have another state assessment? Where are they falling within the rest of the group?
Yeah, that makes sense. And in a year where you have very little testing or it's so skewed by what we've been going through, having it be long-term makes even more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. When you said fresh face, Kathy, I assumed fresh and young face, I assumed you meant me.
Well, you also, and actually we both match, so you look like you planned this.
Anyone else?
Okay, well, thank you very much for the presentation. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to sign off and
Okay.
do a happy dance.
All right.
Done.
Thanks.
Thank
Have a
you.
great day. Have a great snowish day.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye, Luella.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay. We'll move on to our committee reports, and our first committee report would be our curriculum committee. And Meredith, you're the chair.
All right, so we held our curriculum meeting last week, and our minutes are in the board packet, but just a high-level overview. We had a guest join our meeting, Tad Peterson from Heartland Solutions, who is a company that kind of oversees our entire technology infrastructure that the district uses. And he went through a presentation where he talked about the different aspects of that infrastructure, including things like security and mobility and the different platforms that we utilize, and talked about how that strategic plan gets put into play. So that was interesting. You know, some of it, you know, obviously goes a little over our heads, but he did a really great job of breaking that down for us and talking about what the next 5 years in developing a plan or developing a 5-year plan looks like. Then Pam ended up going through some of the assessments that will be coming up in spring, how that's going to look a little bit different this year because of COVID and the blended model. It went through which tests will be required to be in person, which ones can potentially be conducted virtually, and some of those things. And those are all outlined in the board packet as well. And then there were a couple of questions about what summer school was shaping up to be, just kind of given where we're at right now. And Jason went through and kind of mapped that out for us, talking about those specialized weeks and where the team is in planning that. If you remember, Stacey O'Polly heads that up, and she and her team are getting that all mapped out. I know last week, earlier in the week, there was an email sent to parents, just, you know, encouraging people to keep that in the back of their mind. But there will be a beefing up of some of those enrichment opportunities, particularly in the middle school and high school level, to ensure that kids are ready for fall. And so that is my report.
Thank you, Meredith. Any questions for Meredith?
Yeah, I was just wondering, Meredith, you know, it's you know, when you're talking about spring exams, do you know, is the state doing a forward exam this year?
I'm gonna let Pam answer that.
Hi, Dick. Yes, they are. We will do
Okay.
the forward assessment. And just to clarify, all of the assessments must be done in our buildings. We are not able to do anything remote. So even our virtual students will have a plan for them to come into our buildings to take the assessments in a safe manner. The forward exam, they did eliminate one of the assessments. It's a longer writing piece. They took that out just for this year and have also reduced the amount of the questioning that they're going to do on the exam, so that it should take students less time to complete. So that's a little bit of a difference in the forward.
Okay.
And Pam, just to clarify, you also had mentioned that there'll be at least one of the exams where the students are on the computers taking it virtually, but in a proctored environment, right?
Yeah, actually, all of the assessments will happen, you know, with proctors. The ACT is brand new online this year for our district. We elected to use the online format this year because it gives us a little bit broader window to assess students, and also it's less of a hassle for us in terms of paper shuffling. So the assessment that Meredith is referencing is that, and that is a opportunity. Instead of typically having one day where all of our juniors will test, we now have 6 days in our opening window where we can run cohorts of students through the assessment, and those are all proctored in much the same way they always have been, with the real, I would say, pretty rigid guidelines of ACT.
Sure.
Okay, if there's no other questions, I would entertain a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the curriculum committee.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of the curriculum committee meeting.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, those are carried. And then next we have the personnel committee, and that is Lisa.
Sure. We had our personnel committee meeting on January 22nd. The first item that we discussed were changes to the second semester calendar. Typically, parent-teacher conferences are in February, but they are asking if we would be able to move those to March. And the rationale behind that, the parent-teacher conferences were just held in December, so by moving to March would be probably more of a logical thing to do. All March parent-teacher conferences will be virtual. The second item that we discussed was the addition of adding a professional development day for staff. Normally, the second semester has 2 professional development days, which is January 25th and March 19th. And they are requesting that we would add a 3rd professional development day for either the 29th or the 30th of April. And again, the rationale behind adding the 3rd professional development day is that staff and teachers will be able to collaborate on some things that are working, that aren't working, you know, working through the pandemic, kind of sharing their experiences. So it would just be a good day for staff to collaborate on what's going on. This item will be voted upon later in the meeting under new business. So we'll be voting on that today. The second item that we talked about was changes to the teacher handbook regarding proposing changes in lane movement. And what lane movement means is if a teacher has gotten accreditation or possibly a master's degree, they had the ability that they could request a lane movement up, but they could only have done that once a year. So what they're asking is that the lane movement request could be added, a second time would be added on February 1st. So again, that will come up in the later in the meeting under new business, and we'll be able to discuss and vote on that regarding adding an additional lane movement to the handbook. The other item that we discussed was blended learning as far as strategic approaches to minimizing teacher absences and staffing issues during the pandemic. And now that we have gone back to a blended learning model, we're trying to maintain that, you know, that we will not have to go virtual again. So some of the things that they are starting to do now would be the continuation of having 1 full-time substitute teacher at all elementary buildings and having 2 full-time substitute teachers at all the secondary buildings. So adding substitute teachers in those buildings are going to hopefully alleviate if a teacher is out possibly with COVID or some other illness, you know, that we can still try to maintain having a substitute teacher in those buildings. Also, if a teacher is quarantined and they feel well enough, they could stay home, teach from home while their class is full-time in the classroom, and they would be able to have an aide there. So that's another thing that that we're trying to implement, that we can keep those classrooms open. Also, another thing that the nurses were able to get, we're actually implementing a drive-up COVID testing center for staff, and that started on January 19th. So symptomatic staff can be tested from the day that they develop symptoms. We'll receive the results back in 12 to 24 hours. A negative test will be able to have them return to the building if they feel well enough. So again, we have on-site. It's being done at Lincoln High School in the back of the building. So we have on-site COVID testing for staff. So that was a very good thing to hear. The last thing we discussed was budget and staffing. Over the past several years, we went into a process with the goal of being cost neutral when it came to staffing the budget. Assuming the referendum passes, the district will still need to plan for a budget reduction of $350,000 in each of the next 3 years in lieu of using dollars from fund balance. So again, you know, this discussion of the budget and passing the referendum and how it's going to affect our staffing, that's just an ongoing scenario that we're going to be discussing for many months to come. So that's pretty much all we discussed during the Personnel Committee. Are there any questions?
Yeah, Lisa, I've got a couple of questions. You know, the dates, the 29th and the 30th for an additional staff development day. Are those dates currently student contact dates?
So those dates were dependent on whether or not we would need to use a weather makeup day on April 30th. As far as your other question, I'd refer that to Joyce. So Joyce, could you answer that for us, please?
Yeah, it gets a little confusing. So the idea would be, of course, we want to add a professional development day. And we're looking at April 29th or 30th. And the date is really dependent on if we need our weather makeup day or not. So if the 30th, which is a Friday, if that's not needed as a weather makeup day, we would do the professional development on Thursday, the 29th. And then Friday, the 30th would be a no school day, no staff day. That's if we don't need the weather makeup day. If we do have a actual snow day, and we do need April 30th as a weather makeup day, they would attend school on the 29th, and then the professional development day would be the 30th. So yeah, it gets a little confusing, but so I don't know if that helped, Dick.
Okay. Currently the 29th is not a student contact date, but it would be used if we need a makeup date. Is that correct?
Well, right now, as the calendar is, the 29th is a school day.
Okay.
And the 30th would be our weather makeup day.
Okay.
If we need it. If we don't need, and forget the professional development, if we wouldn't need the weather makeup day, then that Friday, that weather day, would be no staff, no students.
Okay.
I would have a question in that regard and would kind of add on to what Richard asked. We have rationale for why we want a professional development day for our staff. However, there's no rationale as to why we want to reduce the student learning by another day when we've already reduced student learning throughout the year. And that's a concern of mine. Was there any discussion of that at the committee meeting?
That did not come up, but you're right. I mean, it would mean a day that the students would not be in school.
It did
Correct.
actually come up. It did to some degree because I did bring up DPI minutes and if it would interfere with the requirements that we have, but that was the way I had asked it in that meeting.
I guess I would just add that the day also correlates to the professional development that's happening at our elementary school and the bridges, the math professional development as well. So there is a requirement that we need to bring our staff together to do that professional development at that time so that they can plan for math moving forward. So we definitely understand the balance of trying to be able to provide as many instructional minutes as needed and also provide our staff with an opportunity to engage in this quality professional development that would lead them to working together for that day, to building their math curriculum and other programming for the rest of the school year during this blended learning transition to face-to-face. So, I mean, there has been a lot of discussion internally about that, and we felt like still critical for us to provide quality PD for the staff.
And then Lisa, I would just have a question on the other motion that'll be brought forward, the lane movement.
Yes.
There's a recognition at the end of the minutes that the committee understands that there's going to have to be cuts of at least $350,000 each year because we've been using fund balance. And that's assuming that a referendum passes. With those cuts that are going to have to be made, why would we at this time increase expenses? Wouldn't this be better to bring back forward, say, at the end of the budget cycle when we're understanding where we're at? We haven't had this for years. We haven't had it all along. It just seems like this is an untimely time to bring this motion forward that increases expenses.
Sure, and I can understand that. Do we have any idea, Joyce, what the cost of something like that would be to add this second opportunity for lane movement? Or don't we know that?
Yeah. I don't see it, quite honestly, as a huge expense. It provides staff another opportunity to, instead of just once a year, being able to put in for a lane movement. There's many staff that complete their credits or I shouldn't say many. There are staff that complete their credits or get their masters in December. And in lieu of making them wait until the start of the next school year, it gives another opportunity. When a teacher moves to the next lane, they do receive $1,500 with that. So anyone that would qualify for that lane movement, for example, that second opportunity, would get $750 at that time versus the full $1,500. We don't have, quite honestly, and I could get more information if you'd like. The number of staff doing lane movements has decreased pretty significantly, and that is since there were changes in licensure. Years ago, teachers had to complete so many credits, when it came to renewing and maintaining their licensure. And that changed when the state went to lifetime licenses. So the number of people doing lane movements has significantly decreased just in the last couple of years.
Any other questions for Lisa? Otherwise, I would.
I do have one more question.
Go ahead.
I was wondering, it's with the full-time substitute teachers, it's I would imagine there has to be some days when there's not a sub needed, and I was wondering, how is that sub used during the times that there's not a sub request?
Sure. Yeah, they would still be, more often than not, they're used. However, there are days when they're not necessarily filling a teacher vacancy. So then the principal has the discretion, and they'll assign that sub to a teacher, to a classroom, to just add some additional, support. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Joyce, would they ever move to another building if they're needed?
We would, yes. If from the health and safety perspective, the idea is to keep them in their building that they're assigned to from a health and safety perspective. However, if there's a building that has exhausted their options for a sub, and we have one of our full-time subs in another building that's not in an assignment in that building, we would move that substitute teacher.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I have one more question. You just covered so many different topics. The drive-through screening, I guess I'm kind of curious, it's how much is it being used, and is it just scheduled during a short window of time, like at the end of the school day?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we started last Tuesday, was our first day that we did the testing. I can tell you last week, over those 4 days, over the course of the 4 days, we had 10 of our staff tested. Again, the nice thing about it is, the testing is done between 1 and 3, Monday through Thursday. And then Friday, it's from 9 till 2. So oftentimes what happens is somebody might wake up and have symptoms. Our protocol says you can't come to the building. They notify their supervisor, myself, the nurse. Nurse gets in touch with them right away. Typically, then they're tested that same day. And we've been getting results by 8 the next morning. So, it's quick, it's easy, it's the PCR test. So it's the good test, as Jenny Hins would say. And again, then if it's negative and that staff is feeling well enough, they're back in the building.
Sure.
Yeah. But yeah, 1 to 3, Monday through Thursday, 9 to 2 on Fridays.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I would entertain a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the Personnel Committee meeting.
I'll move
I
the
would move,
amendment
go ahead.
of the Personnel Committee.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, thank you. Then we move on to the report of the superintendent, and Joyce, you may as well stay on because you're first.
All right, so should have the personnel report in front of you. I think that was in board book on Friday. One of the things you'll notice is that through some discussion, decided to offer some opportunities, some sport opportunities at Wilson and Washington. So they will be doing it. It'll be a very shortened season, 4 weeks instead of 10. But they're going to do girls and boys basketball at both buildings, and then wrestling at both buildings. So definitely I've learned a lot from the high school. So all of those same protocols are in place at Wilson and Washington, but felt good about moving forward with some winter sports at Wilson and Washington.
Are the stipends, given it's a shorter season, are the stipends prorated to reflect the shorter period of time?
Yep. Yeah, because normally it's 10 weeks. I don't have the full amount right in front of me, but we prorated it based on 4 weeks instead of 10 weeks. Yeah.
And then Joyce, you probably can't answer this. Chris is here. He could probably answer it better. We're not offering swimming. And perhaps Chris can answer that question. There's a reason why we're not offering swimming at our middle schools.
I can probably jump in on swimming. One of the things that we did during the pandemic is we closed our pools and we've closed our locker rooms, with the exception of the locker room at Lincoln High School for boys swimming. And that was our health protocol discussion. So even in the models that you're witnessing at Lincoln and at Wilson and Washington, the kids are not going to go into the locker rooms. They're going to bring their clothes and not change in the locker room. So because we felt like that was the model we were going to use based on some feedback we had in conversation with our health protocols, we decided to not use the locker room and swim because we just couldn't do the same social distancing. So that determination was made based on where we're at today.
So they're allowing wrestling to occur both levels? I find that surprising, just given the nature of wrestling. And we're comfortable with that?
So wrestling's been going on since phase 2
Okay.
and at the high school. And again, it's not the same model as what we would see, whereas there is some limited, but yes, there is physical contact. Kids are practicing wrestling and they're doing the wrestling, and we're testing kids. I shouldn't say testing. We're doing protocols to make sure that they're healthy before we begin to the extent possible. And because of that, we're trying to provide some activities for kids after school at our middle schools. And again, that's a voluntary opportunity for our kids. So, it's been going, I guess, well. We haven't had issues with students passing the virus to each other. So that has been going on. It looks different than maybe what you say. There's masks going on, and that's something that I think we could all question, like, does it matter to wear a mask when you're wrestling? But we've been asking them to do that, and they've been doing that and complying. So I think we're looking at it 2 pieces. One, we're trying to give kids some opportunities after school, and 2, we know that it's voluntary. So obviously no one has to do it. And so that's why we've done that.
And Mark, there continues to be, or there is inter-district competitions in wrestling?
Yes. So our winter sports are competing with our conference winter sports teams. So the Green Bay schools, Pulaski and Sheboygan schools, Howard Swamico, they're all competing in a limited model. There's less games and the travel is less, and there isn't triple duels, but it looks different. But it has been going on since the first of the year, give or take, in that range, where schools have competed in basketball, swimming, gymnastics, and wrestling for us.
Yeah. Any cancellations due to COVID?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, if there's no other questions for Joyce, I would entertain a motion in a second to approve the personnel report.
Also move.
Do we have a second?
No, I second.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, and then we move on to the open enrollment for students with disabilities. Is that Joanne, perhaps? Okay, there you go, Joanne.
It is. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. I think you've had an opportunity to look through the detailed memo about open enrollment for our students with disabilities. A couple of things I want to say, and then certainly we'll take any questions you might have, is that this has been a year like no other. And when it comes to open enrollment, that is also the case, as for a while, our initial evaluations were not progressing. And so numbers in special education are different than they ever have. We've had fewer birth to 3 referrals as well. We believe that's just because people are kind of holding off on some of those things given the pandemic. We've also done 0 referrals for emotional behavioral disabilities this year, EBD, because for the most part, our students have not been present for us to be observing those behaviors that might be of concern. And although we did see some students transfer out, we are now seeing students transferring back into us. So it's interesting for us to look and think about all of that as we prepare to be sure that we have the appropriate number of staff members to match up with our student needs. So when you're looking through the memorandum, I want to make sure that you know that this is not a staffing document, it's an open enrollment document. So we are required in January to determine our open enrollment spaces. But as this school year progresses, I will continue to watch student needs and student numbers, and then do more specific staffing, which I will do with the help of Joyce Greenwood Arts, and certainly in conferring with Mark and principals. But this document does show that we have taken the staff members that we have this year and the students that we anticipate for next year, and we have done that math to determine what kind of space we have in open enrollment. Those of you who have seen this memorandum before know that we go through a process whereby if you look at the grid, you know that the program or service is listed, and then our projected enrollment, including some information about any areas where there is more than 1 teacher, then a suggested enrollment per DPI, and then a working capacity and an open enrollment ceiling to help us know how many spaces we might have available. That right-hand column is the column that typically is most interesting because it shows us what number of spots we may have available in open enrollment. And if you're following with me on that document, or if you recall from looking at it previously, in early childhood and 4K, we have some spots open. Early childhood, 5 spots, 4K, 8 spots. I would like you to keep in mind that typically any student who is a 3 or 4-year-old is likely to have some other services, such as occupational therapy, physical therapy, or the need for a speech and language pathologist. And because those areas are closed, if a student would require any of those therapies, they would not be able to fill one of the open enrollment spots in special education. The way that I like to say that is that it's not an a la carte menu. We have to be able to take the whole child's program. So even though we have 5 and 8 spots open, it would be a rare circumstance that we would actually have a student who could transfer into us, because it would be a rare circumstance that they wouldn't have a need for other therapies. As you look through the various other closed and open programs, you can notice that we have just a couple of places where there is a spot or two that we would have available for individuals with IEPs who would like to open enroll with us. And the vast majority of our programs are closed based on numbers. So this is an item that we would be looking for a motion. And I'm wondering if you have any, if anybody wants to do that, and or if you want to ask any questions.
Yeah, Joanne, I'm glad you explained the no services available in OT, PT, and speech, because I kind of looked at that in regards to those early learning it's openings as well. So you addressed it before I had a chance to ask a question. You did mention, however, Joanne, that you do have it's some kids that have transferred out, out of some special education students that have transferred out, and some of them are coming back. Are there some districts in our county that are still accepting special education students?
Yes, I couldn't name them exactly, but there are some districts who are not completely closed to
Okay.
students with IEPs. The other thing that happens is that sometimes families choose to revoke consent for special education services. So they sometimes will revoke consent for special education and enroll in another district as a general education student. And then if they return to us, they may or may not request for us to consider re-implementing their IEP. And if their evaluation is current and valid information, we oftentimes can use that information and start their services up again. So those are the two ways that we see. Some are going and keeping their IEP, some are going out to parochial schools where their IEP then is not treated the same, and some revoking consent for special education services.
Joanne and Dick, this follows it up. I just want to clarify for all the board members that this is just for students who don't live in our district and wish to come to our district. So any student who moves into the Manitowoc Public School District with an IEP is accepted. And any student who leaves and moves into another school district with the IEP is accepted. This only provides, I don't know if a protection is the right word, but basically that's what the DPI allows us to do, is limit people who don't live in your district to come into special programs that you would have to add staff in order to accept the student. And so that's generally the purpose through in January, making a declaration on how much space you have in September. It's a tough, really a tough job for Joanne, and I appreciate the work she's doing on that. But if somebody moves to us from Two Rivers, Michigan, or wherever, we accept them and they get to be in the program, no questions asked. In a situation where someone applies during the open enrollment period, if they have an IEP, if they have an IEP and they fall in one of those areas that were full, they are not accepted and that they just can't come. So I just want to make sure you clarify that.
Okay, if there's no other questions, I would entertain a motion and a second to approve the report.
I'll move we approve the report.
Do I have a second?
I'll
Okay.
second.
Any further discussion? Not all in favor, say aye.
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 Oh, okay. Then we'll move on to scholarships and loans for 2020, 2021. And is that Angela would handle that? Let's say Angela's here. Oh, there she is. Okay, good.
Hello. Yes, we have the scholarship and loan program for your approval today. It's the time of the year where the high school counselors are starting to prep the class of 2021 for graduation, and they begin the process of offering several scholarships, as you see listed in your handout, just to be given out at the end of the year, and then the loan program that is widely used for graduates of Manitowoc Public School District. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions? If not, I would entertain a motion and a second to approve scholarship and loan.
I so move.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Then we'll move on to discussion on the referendum. Now I'll turn that over to our superintendent, Mr. Holst.
Okay, thank you very much. Just wanted to take some time during the next several board meetings to make sure that we're answering questions and getting some feedback from the board and providing some information on a global sense regarding our referendum. What I wanted to do today is just provide a big picture on why, so that hopefully you have some talking points if in your groups, communities, or emails people are asking you, you have some talking points on why are we asking for $4.3 million and what does that mean for the district. So what I want to do real quickly is share my screen. This information has been shared before, but I guess it's just important that at this time helps me share that with you. Let's take a brief pause here and look over saying that that's on.
Carrie?
Mhm.
I just want to ask Mary to screen.
Carrie, can you mute your, we're getting some feedback on you.
Can I mute?
Yep.
I don't know, can I?
Right at the bottom.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yep, you got it. Thank you. Okay, so the information that I'm showing you here is something that we've shared before. We talked a little bit about it once before, but I want to kind of give a general information about our school district and what one question that was asked for me earlier was, how can we move to a $4.3 million referendum and have little to no increase on our taxes? And so what I want to explain to you is there's a number of different avenues, but the simplest avenue to look at would be our general fund. And our general fund is Fund 10 generally. And what that does is it really allows, that really is the amount of money that we levy. And levy meaning how much we ask the taxpayers to approve that we will expend. Now, our general levy, as you see here, in 2016 was 19 million, and in 2021 was 21 million. That is only a piece of what the Manitowoc Public School District uses. In 2020, 21, we will accept about $42 million from our state, and we'll accept another about $3 million from the federal government. There's a lot of other pieces to that, but the $20 million is what our taxpayers pay. That $20 million in our levy then helps us assign, based on a few different factors, the net tax levy rate, which is what you see us talking about often, which is the amount of money per 1,000 that our taxpayers pay. And this row on the bottom here in blue shows the next tax levy over the last 6 years. And you can see in 2016, with 17, it was $8.37. Today, it's $7.81. And we would anticipate, based on some factors, that with a $4.3 million referendum, that's what it says here, it's $7.80. So there's some factors in that. The biggest factor is likely our property value increase. And so what happens is you take the overall value of the MPSD properties and you divide that into our tax constituents, and that's where we get a number. So our tax, when we talk about our property tax value, we've seen some increases some years and some decreases. So if you look at 2016, we see we had a 1% increase. And then 2017, we had a decrease. And what we typically see is those increases and decreases means that the levy changes to that tune. Not always, but generally that's the case. What happens here is what we'll see is our property values moved in 2019, 4.72, then 6.93, and then 4.62 this year. That's how much our property values increased. So when someone says, you know, what does that mean for me? Well, the levy from 2020 to 2021 moved 4.53%, less than our property tax increase. Hence, we have just about a 1% reduction, if that makes sense, right? So you can see that it's not 100% the way it goes, but that's the accurate facts. One of the things that is key to the Manitowoc Public School District's operating is the fact that there has been some significant changes to our voucher payments, which are levied to our taxpayers. And you can see in 2016 and 17, that levy amount was $150,000. And you can see in 2020-21, that amount was $1.9 million. So the example I use, because of actual dollars, and I've shared this before, but we moved about $1 million in a tax levy, meaning money available to the district from 2020 to 2021 or 19 to 20. You can see that the general fund 10 was $20 million, $144,000, and it moved to $20 million, $55,000. What we also know is that our voucher payment, the amount of money that we have to pay out to the levy, increased from 1.5 million to 1.9 million, or about $424,000. So what that means is that even though we're increasing the actual available money to the district by $900,000, 424,738 are going to schools that are students who don't attend here. So that's not money that we have available to us. So actually our availability is less. So the reason why, the answer back to that question is, why would we see the net tax levy not change, is because we're anticipating a 3% increase in property value. Now you can see over the years prior to that, that's an estimate, and it's probably a conservative estimate based on a 4.62, 6.93, and 4.72. That property value also links with some of the other factors that go into our property value. We also would anticipate that based on that, we would see about a 2.9% increase, or about a $610,000 increase. Now, again, that's to the overall budget. The state will, if the state's money, the $42 million increases, likely then our net tax levy, or our ability to receive funds from our taxpayers, will decrease. And if the state gives us less money, we likely then have to ask for more money from our constituents. The challenge is we're not in control of all of those factors, right? In likelihood, we're not in control with any factor other than our expenses. And so that's, I guess I just wanted to share that information with you, and I will pause for a moment here and see if there are any questions that people have specifically about that tax levy document.
I mean, I don't know if I can talk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there a simple, if somebody comes up to me, as they already have, and said, well, you know, why are you raising this? And even the people that you interviewed said, oh, I would never vote to increase my taxes. Well, the explanation you gave was pretty comprehensive. What would one of us say to somebody that came up and said, come on, how is it not going to increase? How is it not going to increase the levy? Give me one sentence.
Okay, so it likely won't increase the levy because your property taxes will go up by 3%. And so likely you will see an increase of about 3% in your, not just your school piece, but your overall property taxes, because it's going to go up by 3%, right? Your property value increases, likely the amount of money you pay to the state, the county, to LTC, and to Manitowoc Public School District will go up potentially by 3%. The amount of money that we need to raise, that let's say $21 million, that's the amount, regardless of how much the property value increases or decreases. We are only going to likely get $21 million. That's our estimate. If the property value increases by 6%, the net tax levy goes down even more, because we still are going to, so here's how I would explain it, and this is unique, right? If your property value is worth $100,000 and your property value increases, and we'll use simple numbers, by 10%, your property value is now, you're paying taxes on $110,000. The school district was saying you needed to pay me, let's just say in that case, $700 or $780 because that was your portion, okay? The school district still only gets $780 from you. But because your property is now at $110,000, I'm going to charge you less per 100,000 for that $7.80. So the district is still getting the $780, but you're now paying $7.40 because your property value increased. That's how the levy goes down, right? The challenge with that is it also is dependent on how much money the state increases. So the state has a budget and they give school districts money. If in fact the money that the school district in Manitowoc gets is more, then we have less need to the local taxpayers. And if the state gives us less based on their funds, then we would go back because we still need that $780. So it's not just one piece. And the challenge is there is no easy solution to why. But the other piece, what I tell you is this: the district has been a low spending district for decades. And because of that, we've asked our taxpayers for the last 6 years to consider a referendum 2 times in a row now. They've said yes. If in fact, and so that's part of our budget. If that part goes away, we now have to reduce from now until we decide something different, $3.5 million. Plus, you heard earlier that we're moving towards taking a smaller piece, about $360,000 per year for the next 3 years, to reduce our reliance on fund balance because we're taking money out of our savings to pay for our budget. Absent that, we have to cut $4-point-something million. We really we're asking for 4.3. We're taking 1.3 out of fund balance this year and have a $3.5 million referendum. All things considered even and no increases, we probably need at least 4.8 and likely 5.0. But we're only asking for 4.3 because we think that is a reasonable expectation. We're saying we think that that's no new money. You don't have to pay additional money for your net tax levy. So if your property value goes 3%, and we're saying that's how that goes. Again, it's complicated because there's so many factors. The number of students we have, how much aid the state gives us, all those things as of January 26th, I don't know. So what I do know is estimates based on what we've seen in the past. I do know that we have $3.5 million in our referendum this year. And if we don't go back to ask for any other money, we'll have to cut $3.5 million out of our budget, which will be significant. And I would say potentially devastating because it's just something that will go away forever. So I guess at each board meeting, I'd like to just make sure that I'm presenting information to the board so that they have some talking points. And again, my job will be to make sure that I'm communicating internally, externally. I've got a plan to do that. I'll share that in just a little bit, but I want to make sure the board has information so that they feel like they're empowered enough to make some general communications. You don't have to be experts, but general communications to people who are asking questions. Okay. Other questions or if I didn't answer that well? Okay, a couple quick things. Just want you to know about the referendum. We have a link on our website that has the original or the initial communication that I sent out to our families last week. We will begin to update that information when we put out information and other data. Again, we're not able to communicate to our public about vote yes or vote no. We just want to be able to help them understand the data and the information available. I am working over the next 4 weeks to have go into each of our buildings, staff meetings to share with them information regarding the referendum, very similar to what I talked to you about, high level, so that they can understand, our staff knows. We will then work through communicating with our families to make sure that they also know in the same model. We'll have some outside communications to our public, again, just information so they know. That'll come closer to March than today. It'll be a little bit farther, closer to the referendum. And then we're going to schedule some public question and answer opportunities. And I'm going to work with Mr. Nichols a little bit in the near future to talk about what dates those might be. Just public information sessions, similar to what we did back in March and April to get feedback and share with families about some things that were going on. I will continue to do lots of communications at lots of civic organizations that I'm part of to make sure that people in our community who have questions have the ability to ask. And I'll do everything I can to answer the questions that I get, whether that's in the media, through the emails, or in phone calls that I have regularly. Questions or comments?
Mark, the public information sessions, they're going to be virtual?
As of now, I think that, and again, I have to talk with President Nichols, but I think that's probably the best case scenario. I think it's also most convenient for families that they could just be at home and watch and potentially engage in some questions. I just don't think we're ready to bring large groups of people together. Although in the past when we did it, we didn't have large groups, but I'm not sure what that looks like. So
when you have those public information sessions scheduled, certainly it's easy to let the families of students know. How about the general community? How will you get the message out to them that you have these sessions planned?
Yeah, well, as soon as we decide on the timing of those sessions, we'll send out communications via mailers. We'll send out information, and then, in a mailer that says, hey, here's some more information. The newspaper and our radio media has also done a nice job of just doing some general, information sessions that they've done enough for us that they'll put those out as well.
Do they put announcements like that in the Chronicle, which probably has a greater distribution than the Herald Times itself?
So the answer is yes and no. For sure, if you pay for it.
Yeah.
It's not, again, and I guess it depends on what you're looking for. Like, there are public service announcements that all media does. We just don't always have as much communication with the Chronicle as we do with like HGR or CHA Broadcasting. They do a lot of just general information for all community news.
Sure.
But yes, we'll work on all the avenues, definitely. And we have done, and we will do again, door-to-door mailers, where we send out to every address in the MPSD and information. But again, like I said, that's going to be closer to March than in January, just to make sure that people have an opportunity to gather that information, read that closer to the election than farther. Okay. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm going to move on to the return to school. Obviously, we are really excited about our students being back in the buildings today. I mentioned before, it's almost comical that we have 30 days of no snow, and then on the day we come back, we have all the snow, but that's part of being ready. I also would just tell you a few just real positive things going on. We've probably celebrated, but maybe not publicly enough, that all students are eligible for free lunch. And when I say all students, I mean all students. So every student has the ability to take lunch. We've worked through the process of counting that. And whether you choose to be free, and if you're free and reduced or not, it doesn't matter. Every student gets the same lunch and breakfast. So that's exciting through the end of the year. That's part of the federal program. Exciting news for all of us. I would also, again, I know that we heard in the committee reports, but we've reiterated that we've had staff, and we have the ability for staff to test at our sites. So that's a positive news. I got information today that said that the educational staff will be in phase 1B beginning about March 1st. That came out today from the health department, so that their first priority will be the educational staff. That includes teachers and all people who work in the buildings. And unless they get it earlier, obviously a delay of vaccinations would be later. So we don't have the details and haven't signed up people yet, but I got information today that says they're moving forward as of March 1, and that's their goal date. So that's been public. So that's exciting for our staff as well. And then, as we look at our county and community health, we continue to see a decline in the number of daily cases. I do know that the National Guard is doing testing today at our county building. But again, I don't know what that test positiveness looks like, but we are trending in a direction, and as much work as we've done on coming back to virtual, we will begin to shift our thinking about what it looks like in a face-to-face model, because we know it won't be exactly the same. And we'll continue to talk to you about what that looks like as soon as we see some positive cases. I would reiterate that we're really going to keep our eye on those secondary indicators. Those secondary indicators are the number of staff who are ill, our ability to provide the PPE, and our ability to keep students healthy as well. So those things are moving forward. But we're excited about being back. And by the end of the week, all the students who have chosen to come back in a blended model have had that opportunity, and we'll keep looking at how that's working for us. Go ahead.
Mark, I'm assuming that the teachers had training in how to deliver with kids in the room as well as virtually at the same time, and with the equipment and everything?
Yeah, so that went on last week. So Wednesday, Thursday, I believe at the secondary level, and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at the elementary level, those trainings went on, in addition to some time on Friday and Monday to practice with those things. But yes, I saw a digital presentation put on by our tech team that was very robust and allowed staff to do it. I think, as anything, I'm confident there'll be a few quirks. I noticed today, like when we were all logging on here, the Wi-Fi stream was a little different, and I had to make a few adjustments because for the last 90 days, we didn't have any challenge of Wi-Fi, so probably a ton got shifted to this building, but now they're spreading it out throughout because kids are in the building using the Wi-Fi. So again, just pieces that we're learning as we move, and we'll be able to take some look backs at what it looks like on the afternoons at the middle school and Fridays at our elementary and high schools.
Thank you.
So Mark, do we have any additional technology support for our teachers though, who are struggling and having those quirks with the systems? Because I actually was told that some of those technologies did not arrive until yesterday at our high school level.
I guess I don't know about that. I wasn't aware of that piece, but each building has a tech person who has the ability to, who will look at what, when someone needs help, we ask them to put in a help web desk ticket. And I know that our people, specifically at our secondary buildings, there are tech people in that building that their job is to help support the teachers. So if they reach out, I'm confident that those folks will be able to help them. We have a really, really, really great staff who will reach out. And then I think the other piece would be, I know that there are just resident experts in each building. And some of those people, how did you do this and what does it look like? And that's what the PLC time will happen as well, when our teachers are collaborating about what's working. So again, I wasn't aware that some staff got theirs this week, but I know that there were, I don't know how they got rolled out or if they got missed on something, but I know that there are people in the building, in each one of those buildings, that will help them if they need help.
Okay. And I guess I'd just like to make the commentary that I'm hoping our families and even our students will give some latitude to our teachers who are learning a new model again. So that, there is a learning curve no matter what happens. So
it is. And it's different, right? It'll be different for the kids.
Yeah.
It'll be different for the staff. And I'm definitely aware of that. And I would also say, I think we're all hopeful that our health gets better, and it'll be different again when we're back to school 5 days a week. I mean, but one thing that we do know is that we're getting better at pivoting. I think Joanne Metzen says her knees are a little sore and stiff because of all the pivots she's been making, which is very true, right? We brought back some kids on the 18th and then changed it again. But change, although what we're trying to do is make it better, right? And I know that we're trying to support the student learning and support our teachers teaching the best of our ability.
Yeah. I mean, I hope our teachers realize that, I mean, I guess I'm speaking for all of us, that we don't expect it to roll out perfectly from moment one, right? We all understand what they're going through, so.
Okay, any other questions for me?
Mark, I would just have some positive numbers from the health department for us. And of course, remember, this is just data, but one of them is the burden rate that we use in our gating criteria. As of yesterday's numbers is at 430. And that's a good number for us. That's a good number for our community. If we look back to October, it was 1187. So that's a significant change from when we went into virtual to where we are now. In addition, the number of active cases is at 885, and back in October, it was at 1671. So those active cases have almost been cut in half. The number of hospitalizations is down to 82. It was over 100. It was at 105. So those are positive. The hospital beds usage is at 75%. We've been told by the hospitals that anything over 80% becomes a concern for them. So that's a good number. Numbers are trending in the right direction. You know, we don't know that they'll continue that way. Obviously, it's been a fluid situation where it looks good for a while and then it bounces back. You know, but the only good thing about the Packers losing is we don't have to worry about community spread on Sunday, January or February, whatever it is, 7th, right? But so those are good numbers, and that lends itself to being back in a blended model and looking forward to, as Mark said, being back 5 days a week, full-time teaching and learning, if that were to continue. So.
Yeah, but way to bring it down, Dave, about the Packers.
Yeah, well, you know, we can't do anything about that. They had the chance, right? Oh, well.
Oh, boy. Yeah, that's exciting news.
Good. Thanks. Okay, then we'll move on to new business. And the first thing on there would be our 2019-2020 audit report. And I believe Angela would have that for us. And there she is again.
So I guess this is the final event of the 2019-20 budget. So often business offices and school districts are working within 3 fiscal years, finishing up 1 year in a current year and then looking ahead to the next one. So as you can see, the audit documents are quite long and very detailed. Had a chance to meet with our auditor. Very, very nice to connect with him and just learn about the audit process in Manitowoc Public School District, which is very similar to other school districts. So highlights I'd want to just bring up if you want to take a glance at your packet. Pages 11 and 12 will show like the major distributions of revenues and expenses. And so often, like as Mark has mentioned, we receive about 60% of our aid for the school district through the state, and the balance of that is levied to the local taxpayers. And then in our expenditures as a whole, about 55% goes to just instruction. And then there are other areas of main spending as well. So those are interesting to note. Just as a part of our self-funded insurance program, we always have to book at the end of the year, just make sure that we set aside enough money to pay claims from the previous year. So we had $1.9 million set aside for that. And then our fund balance, we had 1.3 million put into fund balance from this past fiscal year. So that is of note. And then yearly OPEB, which is our retirement deferment programs, we contribute about $190,000 for that yearly as a liability. And we continue to have that liability in our budget. So those are the main highlights, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Angela?
Yeah, I guess I feel like I should ask because I have no idea what you just talked about with the liability of $190,000 for the retirement fund. Can you explain that to me? I have no idea what that's about.
Yes, that's a benefit that retirees in our district have, or some retirees in our district have available to them just as a part of their longevity in the district. So that's an agreement that they have just based on their years of service. So it just covers health insurance costs for a period of time after they retire.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Angela. And I'm glad there were a lot of questions because it is a confusing report. I've been through those for many times and with the county as well. And typically the board members don't know what's going on. Even when the auditor is there to explain it, you know, it's a difficult task.
Yeah. I mean, whenever you have questions, let me know.
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, then we'll move on to the, we have several items that are brought forward from the Personnel Committee. And the first one would be the 2020-2021 school calendar revision, which is, I believe, the Staff Development Day. We have a motion and a second already from the committee, so we would open it up for discussion. I would, let's see, I'll go back to the, okay, the school calendar. I'm not going to put that. I still think we've already reduced student learning, and I don't see that we should do that again. We added staff development days this year as a result of the change, and I understand that, and I'm sensitive to that, but I'm just not going to support adding another or reducing another day of student learning. I think all the student learning we can get this year, and I don't know this. I can only go based on the feedback I received from parents, but I suspect that most parents would be hopeful that we could do as much student learning in the second semester as possible. So I'm not going to support it.
And I share your thoughts, Dave. I have concerns too about eliminating a student contact day to, I understand the importance of professional development, but especially during the course of this year, those student contact days I think are critical.
Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? No.
No.
The motion passes 4-2. Is that correct, Laurie? Okay, thank you. With myself and Richard voting no. Then we move on to the next item, which is the teacher handbook revision. And that again doesn't require a motion and a second, but opens discussion. And I'll just open discussion. And what I'm going to do is make a motion to postpone this motion until our first meeting in September. At that time, we would know where we are at with our expenses and revenues. It would be more appropriate to look at increasing our expenses at that time if it's possible. We know that if we need to reduce a much larger amount, it's going to affect our staff. And this would be one area that I believe isn't a necessary item right now and should be postponed until we have a better idea. And so my motion is to postpone until the first meeting in September. And that would require a second.
I would actually second that. I think that's a wise move.
Any discussion on that motion?
I'm wondering, again, did Joyce remind me, did you say how many people we would potentially have in that bucket to earn the masters in that kind of off cycle?
Yeah, so typically the two primary ways that a teacher can move a level is if they complete 12 credits. And of course, that can occur over a year or 2 or 3, but completion of 12 credits or getting a master's degree. Those are the two most common. So,
and that master's is not necessarily required, or are they doing that in order to teach particular items, particular classes?
Yeah, not so much to be able to teach certain classes. You know, it's really growth and development. You know, our staff wanting to continue to learn and grow and develop. And many times, you know, most of our brand new teachers start out with a bachelor's degree, and many of them at some point, not all, but many of them go on at some point to get their master's.
I guess I would consider if if it was something that was required for their job, say to teach like a dual credit or an early college type of course, that I think we should do that lane movement. Whereas if it's more, like you said, Joyce, more professional development, maybe we could look at a framework where that holds off there. I would hate to say, you know, you're on track to earn your master's, so you can teach this class, you know, for a particular reason, and then, you know, put that on hold after they've paid out their tuition. So, but I wouldn't necessarily support right now in this point in history, doing that for personal professional development.
But we're not really holding off on it. We're just, the whole idea was just to offer a second deadline for it. So, I mean,
right. It is a hold off if you've earned it in December and now you're waiting till spring when you then potentially ask to get this, right? That's what I don't want to do, is have that expectation of, we really need you to get your degree, or we need you to get these credits, but wait, we're going to not pay you for that until 6 months later.
Mm-hmm.
So I see that as being different.
Meredith, that's been the standard all along. This is an addition. And my point is, it's not a necessary addition at this time.
Yeah.
As it's not been in the past, and it can wait until we have a better idea of what our income and revenues are. And I think it's very appropriate for us to look at it that way.
Yeah, I think on one hand, we're looking at doing something for our teachers, right? Like in the meeting, Joyce, you had said this is something like that benefits our teachers because it offers them that second deadline for maybe those who are the December or running 2 weeks late kind of thing. But on the other hand, long term, as Dave is speaking to, we need to think long term here for our teachers too. So I think holding off on a decision, we're not saying no, just holding off on that until September does make sense. In my mind.
Yeah, it really, at this point, it's an opportunity for the teachers to have another opportunity during the year to get their lane movement versus wait sometimes, 6 months or 8 months, or they turn their stuff in late. So, right, the handbook still allows them to have a lane movement once a year. This would just give them an opportunity twice a year.
It's never been done before, though, has it?
Actually, and I don't know when it switched. There was a time that we did allow lane movements twice a year.
Mm-hmm.
This same time period that we're adding, asking to put back. And it's got to be about 5 or 6 years ago that they decided to go back to once a year.
But it's not an expectation or a grievance under the current policy, is it?
No. Ask that again, Carrie.
It's not an expectation or a grievance. I mean, they haven't lobbied for this, have they?
Periodically we'll have a few teachers that ask, or I think I gave the example in the personnel committee. Honestly, inevitably, what happens every year, the deadline right now is October 1st. Inevitably, what happens just about every year that I've been here, somebody comes to us on October 15th and wants to do a lane movement. And they're turning in their transcripts. And, our handbook, our policy would say, maybe they finished in August or June or May, but they turned their request in, 2 weeks late or 3 weeks late. And then inevitable, we say, you've got to wait another whole year. So in that case, they could do it again in February, or again, it would accommodate those that are, meet the criteria in December. So
Joyce, I see a solution in that we maybe just send out an email to all teachers reminding them of that looming date sometime in September, just a basic. And I mean, ironically, I think it's not funny, but we're about education, and it's not great when our kids hand things in 2 weeks late, and we don't make modifications for them necessarily. Our teachers should follow that model too, to be really truthful. But giving them that reminder, I think would be nice. It would be appropriate. So.
And because someone turns in information late isn't a result of anything we've done. I mean, we're not responsible for that. The individual is.
It's
And they
fair, right.
need to meet that responsibility. You know, I'm not sympathetic to. I'm sorry about that, but if you miss a deadline, it's your own fault. And it may not be a lot of people, it may not be a lot of money, but we don't have it right now. We're not certain we have it. And moving this forward simply just delay taking an action that hasn't taken place in the past. And it's been quite a few years since we offered more in terms of lane movements. So I think it's a pretty simple solution.
Yeah, I just say to, be negative on personal growth like that. But I do see it's sort of an exception now, rather than the general pattern. And the money questions are fairly looming and fairly large. So I'd support the motion.
Is there any further discussion on the motion to postpone the motion until our first meeting in September? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, we can postpone that motion then until September. I'll have to make a note and remind ourselves that we're going to bring that back. So, then the next thing is our future meeting dates. Our next meeting would be Tuesday, February 9th. One thing I'd like to bring up is discussion on reopening our meetings to the public rather than doing them virtually. And I'm not suggesting that we don't still have a virtual option for our members who aren't comfortable coming in here. Right now there's 4 of us in here. I think at best we've had 4 in here. If we brought public in, I'm looking around the room and maybe we could bring 10 people in here at the most. Still be able to do it on Zoom. Well, the public, it would be their responsibility if obviously say a couple of you stayed virtual. The public wouldn't be able to be interactive with that. That would be their responsibility, right? I mean, we're not going to provide them with Chromebooks. They would need to bring their own device if they chose that. So they're going to miss some of the conversation, but that's the choice that the public could make. But go ahead, Meredith.
Is there opportunity to meet in a different space so that we can actually distance? Because if not, I'm virtual all the way.
Right. I mean, this place isn't big enough for everybody.
Right.
Right. We couldn't bring all of the board members and the department heads in here and even any members of the public. And the more you restrict it, the less open it is. So yeah, the only other option would be maybe to do it at one of the school auditoriums. I don't know if that's possible. I'm just opening it up because I think we need to move towards opening up our meetings again to the public and not just virtually. It's not worked real well. But I don't know. I'll ask Mark if he isn't the one that's going to be setting this up. Chris is on here. He's going to be involved. I'm sure our IT department would have to do some things.
Yeah, so noon meetings would be a challenge at any school site.
Oh, sure.
But evening meetings, I guess I have lots of thoughts. It depends on, if board members want to be here, we have lots of space in this place, but that would require them to be here virtually. And I don't know if that fixes your problem, right? You see what I mean? Like we have all the conference rooms, so we can spread out, but I don't know that solves what we're trying to accomplish. We could change the dynamics here. These tables are easily moved. We could, spread people out.
Yeah, I'm looking at something that would open it up to the public, right, rather than, and still allow members to be virtual and directors to be virtual as well.
I would want to talk to our IT department about what it looks like, but we have some facilities when I think about in 3 different buildings. There's an auditorium. I think, I don't know what's haven't sat on Lincoln Auditorium if they're preparing for something right now, but the board could easily distance there. And there could be a place for the public. I just don't know how that deal with it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
we
here
could
it'd
do
be,
some work on that. We could make it something work.
it'd be pretty minimal open meeting here.
Right, right. And, you know, I said 10 people. It's probably pushing it. This place isn't very big.
Well, I've noticed on a number of the meetings lately, there've been pretty good tune-ins from the public on it. I mean,
Right, but they wouldn't be able to come into the
they
building.
wouldn't be able to come in here, yeah.
So we'd have to have a sign up and then, you know, you might have a line outside and then, sorry, you can't get in. That would
Yeah,
happen.
what do we do if like 200 people turn up and we say, well, we can let 8 or 10 in?
You know, even if 40, we couldn't let them. I'm saying maybe 10, you know, in this room. If we moved it to a different room, we could have more people available, say an auditorium. You know, say Wilson, because I'm only 2 blocks away. I could just walk over, you know.
Yeah.
But regardless, that would open it up more to the public. But I don't know the logistics.
little more, yeah.
Virtual and a in-person meeting from a board standpoint either in those locations. And how that would work.
It would look different. So one option, I suppose, would be that we would all have Chromebooks. We would spread out socially distance, and then we would all be present. The public would be present, and then that would be a live feed. Again, I need to probably talk with our
Right.
people for sure,
Yeah.
and then we have to create systems of what spacing would look like at an auditorium, whether that's Wilson or Lincoln or Washington.
Yeah.
We've
done public hearings at the auditoriums
Yes.
before. Those weren't telecast.
Right.
And we were all able to sit around in a little bubble at those meetings.
Correct. I'm just thinking about the details of right now. We're speaking quietly to this, and it's broadcasting. When you're sitting at an auditorium, I'm not sure if the people in the audience would be able to hear what's going on. And then if someone's not there, how are they going to see? You know, let's say that I'm not at meetings, for example, and I wanted to be, or a board member wanted to be on there. How does the public interact with that? I'm not sure. Everybody would have to have your camera, and you'd have to log in to see the person who's not there. Does that make sense?
Right.
So it can be done. I know that. We just don't have like a broadcast where we're videotaping and have this great camera system that, you know, is able to go from person to person with microphones that are dropped from the ceiling so that it looks like, you know, we're in a studio. But if you tell me that we need to do something, I'll make it happen.
And I guess that's what I'm asking for the board, is that's something we should be doing. We should be moving towards opening up our meeting to the public in a face-to-face way, as opposed to simply on a virtual feed.
Dave, I like that idea, and I think if we were going to do that, I would recommend that we begin with the evening meetings before we try the day. Selfishly, it's been a lot easier for me to attend during the day virtually, and depending on who may get voted in April, that may be something that we want to explore, is daytime meetings for the working public. So, you know, that may be something in the future anyway, but I would say, yeah, maybe we should explore it for our evening meetings, and at the very least, allowing that public input to occur on site, whatever that site may be.
Right. And, yeah, I would eliminate the virtual feedback if we're doing that. Public
Yeah.
input occur in both sections. It would just be, you're either here and provide it or you're not.
Yeah, I guess my question would be to Mark, you know, apparently our state legislature is considering eliminating the mask mandate, and what does that look like in our district buildings? Because that may be a point of consideration moving in that direction.
Yeah, good point.
So Dave, I'm sorry, I lost.
Go ahead.
My Chromebook went completely blank. So I lost part of this conversation in the stream of it. So we're questioning right now whether or not we should go to open meetings in person, correct?
Well, at least to open it up so that the public would be able to come to our meetings. We wouldn't all necessarily be here, or the department directors perhaps. We would still have, it's be like a blended meeting, right? But we would open it up to the public to come in, and that's, for example, our first meeting would allow public input. They could do that, here, wherever our location was, and not do it virtually. So
Our policy has always been that the first 5 people, I believe it's 5 because it's a maximum of 30 minutes, correct? The first 5 people can speak to the board in person or give that public input. So why not limit it to those people who sign up, say, in advance, and then we can keep our meetings virtual? I do think we have such family or parent engagement. A lot of people watching these because it's virtual more than we have historically. So I think why not keep that going, right? But then we could limit the numbers of people coming in. So it would be limited to the people offering public input in that 5 or 6 people. Just
I'm
something to think about.
Yeah, it's something to think about, but that's even more restrictive and not, we got enough restrictions. That would be, again, we'd have to have people sign up by a certain date, certain time.
Right.
And then just like we do with the virtual, we'd have somebody or a couple of people coming in late and wanting to be in, and then can we let them in? There's exceptions being made. It does lend itself to some problems as well.
Yeah. I think no matter what.
And then the people that want to listen to that input directly don't get it. But I do we will have to restrict the number. That's true. However we do it, that would be one method of doing it, is restricting it to those who were there just to provide public input, right? That would be one way to do it.
I think that's a natural boundary rather than saying, like the first 50 people in and then people are clamoring at the door. At least this way, ahead of time whether or not you're speaking to the board directly. So I it's just thinking it through right now. So
kind of like getting tickets to the game, right? You only got so many and that's it.
Right. But at least you're not at the door saying, nope, sorry, you can't come in. We've reached our limit. That just seems, like you said, kind of wrong and rude. So
do we have a general consensus, though, that we should be moving back to opening up our meetings?
I think it's definitely worth exploring at this point and moving in that direction for the evening meeting.
Okay.
I think Meredith had a question about the mask mandate possibly being lifted. So what's our stand, what's our stance on masks in our buildings?
Well, I would tell you that I'd want to wait until we see what that comeback is, but I would tell you right now, wearing a mask at school protects our students and our staff. And I would not be a proponent of eliminating students and staff from wearing masks.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to get back to face-to-face, and I think masks are going to help us do that. So again, the mandate in my, what I believe is that it's a mandate for public places, but you can choose to manage that. So if a private or a public place wants to have their own procedures or policies, we can do that. We have requirements I've used this before in chemistry class or in the tech room that says you have to wear a mask, you have to wear clothing, you have to wear eye goggles. Those are all safety mandates. I would say that wearing a mask is safety right now for us.
And I agree completely that we need to maintain the mask mandate. So if we're going to open up for public meetings, that is definitely got to be a requirement that anyone coming in is going to have a mask on. So I just want to reiterate that. I would agree to opening up the meetings, but then we have to, require that masks will be worn to attend. So.
Okay.
Just a quick question. Are you going to be looking for something for, what is today?
February 9th would be our
February
next meeting.
9th?
That would be our next meeting.
Is that what you were looking for?
Well, if we could, I would like to get it
All right.
started at that date. And it might be a small step,
Okay.
just as we did when we moved into virtual. We made some changes along the way. We didn't do everything as well as we could have, but that may happen with this as well.
All right.
But I'd like to at least stay right now. Let's move forward in that direction.
All right. So what I would envision, and again, I'll create communication, is that we would have to all log in, whether we're at home or at the location, so that it can be broadcast virtually, if that makes sense, right? Otherwise, if you're there and you're not I don't have a camera that will look at you. So just plan on bringing your Chromebook, and you're going to have to log in and access just like you would be at home, but you'll be able to kind of access that. The other thing that I would say is it's also helpful for board members if you bring headphones, because what ends up happening is you get a lot of feedback if you don't click off, and you'll hear, I can hear Dave talking, but I don't want to hear it through. So it's just, you'll when you're here, you'll get it, you'll see, or wherever we are. So I'll create some communication. I'll talk with our tech team. They're great people. And then we'll find a location, whether that's here for a temporary group or for a larger piece, and we'll keep moving forward.
Okay, that's it. Unless anybody has anything else they want to bring up for the good of the board. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move we adjourn.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. See you on Tuesday, the February 9th.
Yeah.
At least I hope we don't have to meet before that.
Right.
Thank you.